the spirituality, just being like the intuitiveness, and then the self-development of that we're all trying to be better and gain more knowledge and try to get to that as I don't know if you know Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but that top hierarchy is called self-actualization. And that's what we're always trying to reach for. So that's that idea of that we get to live unapologetically ourselves.
Generation X Paranormal. Well, hey everybody, welcome back.
Hey everyone.
We're Generation X Paranormal. I am Logan.
And I'm Nicole.
And we have a really good show.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. So we're going to cover something that we haven't done yet. And quite honestly, I have no idea about it. Something that I know a lot of you guys out there know a lot about. Mm-hmm. So rather than us trying to explain it, we're going to have a subject matter expert kind of come on and get us squared away. But we're going to have Rachel Fiorentino on. And we're real excited to talk to her because she's definitely more an expert than we are. So what can you tell us about her?
So Rachel Fiorentino has a Bachelor of Science in Business Management and also pursued a Bachelor of Science in Nursing. Despite her academic pursuits, Rachel maintained her professional engagement in reading tarot cards, a practice that raised internal conflicts between scientific reasoning and intuitive insight. Recognizing the versatility of tarot beyond mere fortune-telling, Rachel embarked on a transformative exploration. She delved into philosophy and psychology, integrating scientific principles with the mystical realm of tarot cards.
Okay. Well,
let's learn about tarot.
Yeah, let's learn about it.
I'm excited.
Well, hey, Rachel, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on today.
Absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm. You know, we haven't really had an episode that kind of focused a little bit on what we're going to talk about. You know, it's always been something we're interested in, and we've had a lot of psychics and things like that on, but nothing ever as far as like what I think we're going to get into. Yeah, and I'm not trying to be deliberately shrouded in mystery or anything, but if you don't mind, before we get into that, tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I am a tarot reader and a nurse. I started reading professionally when I was about 18. Let's see, to kind of go back to that, before that, I used to listen to the Art Bell all the time. I was like, you got to be with me, right? We remember Art Bell.
Yes, absolutely.
So I used to listen to him when I was about like 9 years old and just was always fascinated by everything. So from there, I just kind of started learning a lot about like mythology and symbology and, what symbols mean. And that kind of led me up to the tarot cards, which I started learning at 16 and went professionally at 18. And I've been loving it ever since.
That's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah. Real quick before we get into the tarot, is it pronounced tarot? I've always said tarot.
I know a lot of people say tarot, but I don't know how it's actually pronounced.
You're the subject matter expert. Tarot, right?
So, and this is silly. This is it's just a British version compared to the American version. And
Gotcha.
when I used to do the psychic fairs and all that stuff, people would always be like, oh, it's tarot. It's tarot. And so there's really no difference. It's just a matter of like, I got told enough times that I started doing it that way.
Okay, well, we're going to say tarot then.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I like that better.
Yeah, it sounds more fancy.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, pinkies out kind of thing.
Exactly.
So when you're not doing tarot reading, so you're a nurse.
I'm also a nurse. Yes.
Good for you.
I've been a nurse. Yeah. It's been a lot harder in recent years. That's for sure.
For sure.
Yeah, unforgiving.
Yeah.
I was an Army medic, so whenever I hear nursing and stuff like that, I'm always like, hey, yeah. So I've lived too many lives. What's that?
Yeah. You didn't follow the medical side?
No, I'll be honest with you. I had gotten to a point where, number one, my scope of practice wouldn't have been the same. And it would have just been kind of weird. And I'd kind of seen everything I wanted to see. I've done a lot of things that I know I could never do with my scope of practice out of it. So I went into other things. I became a network engineer because, it still get to do diagnostics and all that cool stuff. But when I have a bad day there, some people don't get email. I mean, I can live with that. So, but no, that's awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing. And I got to admit, I love the bus behind you. That's so cool. The VW bus.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's my dream car right there. Yeah,
that's awesome.
That's
really
for my
cool.
inner hippie.
Nice. I think we all have one of those for sure.
Yes, we do.
But so yeah, let's talk about tarot. Can you give us now? Granted, I probably should have explained this up front, but I would think most of our audience is pretty, kind of probably middle of the road. I guess I always got to kind of picture my mom. She's not going to know what tarot is, and or she's seen it on TV or something like that. But if you don't mind, kind of giving us like a real brief history and kind of what it kind of all entails.
Yeah, absolutely. So nobody really knows exactly the history of tarot. It seems like the first deck that was very similar to what we use now came in about the 1500s in Milan. And it was actually used as like a game. It was called Tarocchi or Tarocchi. And it was just kind of like a bridge game. But the royalty would ask for cards to be made. And so that's kind of where different card sets kind of came out. That's where like different kings and queens and stuff would be in different decks. And these decks were like works of art. I mean, they were just downright beautiful. You should see them. They're in different museums throughout the world now. But so then France invaded Italy. And with it, they took the cards and went up to France. And so this is about the 1700s. And during this time, there was a big era of just like the occultism. And so everybody was into the secrets and seances and mediums. And so all of that just started like blowing up. And that's the same time that the cards came to be. And it's just interesting that like they just went from, a card game. Now then we have a book that says how to interpret the tarot cards. And it's like there's really no middle ground on where they just came from. So, or as far as like coming from playing cards to divination.
Right.
So, from there, it kind of just went over the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, did the first kind of really true tarot deck that we look at it now. So this is where we have the 78 cards. There's 22 cards that are major arcana, and then the rest of the cards are minor arcana. So the major arcana, for any literary gurus or anything like that, is what we call like the Fool's Journey. So both Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell kind of talked about like the Fool's Journey or the hero's journey. So basically all myths throughout the world and time is kind of based on this monomyth of like the hero kind of going through all these adventures and coming back home the wiser. And so that's exactly what happens with the major arcana cards, is that the Fool is a 0 card, and the Fool, which is us, go through all these adventures and comes back as the wiser one.
Right.
So so these are like the big heavy duty things that are going on in your life. So, the births, the deaths, the like just gonna jump off cliffs and just do something crazy and those kinds, start a business, end a business, any of those kind of big things.
Right.
And then the minor cards are also made up of 4 suits, kind of similar to the poker decks that we've got. And the suits in tarot are stones, which represent like material matter. And then we've got cups, which represent emotional things that are going on. Swords are mental. And then wands, which are any action-oriented things. So, and then you have, ace through ace through 10 on those. And then you have court cards, which the court cards are helpers or can be our herders, depends on if we're not listening or not. And those are kind of like follow that degree of what's happening in our life, but again on the smaller scale, as far as like, if you're mad at your spouse, or you're thinking about quitting, or any of that kind of stuff. Those are the little things versus like the actual oriented of the major cards. So in a nutshell, that is what the cards are all about. So I take it where I really try to pull together both like the science part, which is like all about the psychology, the spirituality, just being like the intuitiveness, and then the self-development of that we're all trying to be better and gain more knowledge and try to get to that as I don't know if you know Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but that top hierarchy is called self-actualization. And that's what we're always trying to reach for. So that's that idea of that we get to live unapologetically ourselves. We just don't worry about what anybody else says. We're in our full glory. We're, just kind of on that perfect internal level of where we want to be. So we're all trying to reach that. And the cards kind of try to help us get there.
Okay.
There's a lot involved in that
Yeah,
that I didn't realize.
Well, I mean, when it comes to cards, I've seen that they can get very ornate, and they can be.
Oh yeah, they're beautiful, most of them.
Yeah, so I always figured there was a lot more under the hood, so to speak, when it came to.
Well, I did too. I just didn't realize there was that much.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That is a lot.
How long did you have to kind of train yourself to kind of get that wealth of knowledge?
Well, I'm still learning, to be honest. I'm still learning about them. And so, it's always funny that at 18, I am telling people's, helping them get onto their path and helping them get to where they need to. At 18 years old, when I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing with my path, but this is what you should do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's awesome.
So, I mean, every day I still learn about something new, that like some kind of synchronicity that happens with the cards, that I'm all like, somebody tells me a story and I'm like, oh, that sounds like the death card, or that sounds like, the alchemy card, and, realize that it's all the same. It all comes together.
Sure.
That's cool.
So you've done, obviously, readings for many people. Have you ever done one for yourself, or have you had them done for you?
Yeah. So for a long time I didn't. And then another mentor of mine was able to say, like, you have to read yourself as if you're like reading somebody else. So you almost have to take like your own ego, your own self kind of out of it. And now when I read for myself, I actually say it out loud, like, that I'm talking with my client across the table. And when I say it, it's like, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense. I better stop doing that or do that. So now I really read for myself like all the time. So, but it's taken me years to get to that level. But now I kind of feel like everybody should read for themselves.
Sure.
Because this is like the closest that you can get to being like your own guru.
Right. I mean, it makes sense.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I guess, always think about how worlds are parallel, right? I'm an engineer, so I'm very algorithmic. So when I do paranormal anything, I always go top down, left to right. I'm very algorithmic in the way I do things, which probably makes me more skeptical than anything else. But I'm kind of the skeptic between us a bit.
Yes, you are.
But hey, look at that.
I know. Harriet wants to say hi.
Hey, that's
Hello,
awesome.
Harriet.
For those of you who aren't watching the video and just listening, Rachel's cat joined in, and I think we're going to ask her some questions. But, but anyway, where I was going with that is being a nurse. How did that impact you, or did it change how you act as a nurse, or vice versa?
Yeah, well, I think I realize that there's a lot of similarities when it comes to that. And it's this idea that you have to study with the book. You have to kind of study what things are, just like nursing. You have to kind of study the book. And then you get to a point where your intuition comes in. And that's when a lot of amazing things start happening. And that's, again, both with nursing and with the cards, when you start using that intuition. So it's the idea of, like, as a nurse, my intuition is saying, like, this patient is not looking good. This patient, something's wrong and we need to find it. Now, of course, somebody with more student loans than me can figure out what's wrong. My intuition is saying, like, there's something wrong and it needs to be fixed. And same thing with the cards is, like, now that I've got a lot of that book knowledge down, it's the idea of, like, that intuition can come out and I could be like, oh yeah, something's wrong. Let's try to fix this. And the cards can actually tell us how to fix it. So they're definitely very parallel. And I think once you get that basic foundation set in, it's amazing what, like, the higher consciousness can help you, or the higher unconsciousness, I should say, can come out and bring out.
Right.
I've never had a reading done.
No. Well,
Do you want one?
Hey.
Sure. Yeah. I'm not asking you to do it. I'm curious because I've never had one done.
This will be interesting.
I was like, I've got the cards here. Let's
You know what? It's funny, while you're setting it up, we always, whenever we do things like that, I'm usually kind of the guinea pig for a lot of things. We recently had something where she was the one being the focus of it.
The frequency healing.
The frequency healing. So it's nice to turn it over.
Yeah.
Nice. All right.
So,
and
I would
stop if
imagine
start getting too personal too. Sometimes you don't want that blasted. So
no, you're okay. We tell our own stories. So.
Yeah, I don't have an edit button, and I kind of let things fly sometimes. I don't care. I figure I turned 50 this year, and I stopped running from things a long time ago. So,
isn't it great? Yeah.
Yes,
it
is
I'll be
liberating.
turning 50 next year, and I'm just like, oh, this is so amazing.
It's very liberating.
It is. Okay, so the way I read this is past, present, and future. So I kind of have several cards laying in groups. So what it's kind of showing, and I mean, just knowing you already, right? It's showing this, like, you're very good with the communications. You're very good with being able to speak your mind. And when you talk, people listen. But it seems like it's taken you a while to be able to trust it. Like, I don't know if you've gotten in trouble a few times where you've said things before and you're just like, oh, I can't retract it. But I think we've gotten more comfortable with that voice now and being able to say things and be able to just, enjoy it. One thing with all this communication, though, not to put pressure on you, have you thought about writing a book?
No, I have not.
You don't have to. But it's just saying that you've got a lot to say. And sometimes we can't say everything in a short little life. So sometimes when we kind of get going with that communications, we want to just be able to, like, continue it long after, our voice can. So just something to kind of put in the back of your, back pocket.
Noted.
So one thing too is that we do have a tendency of beating ourselves up. So we got to stop that. But
that's on track.
It looks like, we've come a long way. We've done better than where we have before. Like, a part of it is that accepting of that perfectionism. It's that idea of, like, we get caught up sometimes in the concept of perfection, but we should really be focusing on progress. I know that's like an old AA thing they say is, progress, not perfection. But that's kind of the same thing too with you, is the idea that we've got to remember, just because our communication might not be perfect or things around us are not perfect, but look how far you've come. So if you're starting to get that self-doubt, you're starting to, beat yourself up a little bit, I need you to stop and realize how far you've come. From there, I think you'll be able to go like, oh, okay, no, I have come a long way from back here. So, and I know that I can keep moving forward. Now, right now, it's showing that we're kind of on this edge right now of, like, how how do I say this? It's kind of like we're going to have to like move full force or keep it the way it is. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes,
So
it does.
like,
Yes, it does.
yeah. So,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all like, we're kind of coming up on this decision where you have to do one or the other. You know, we've been
Yes.
able to just kind of ride it out for a little bit and just kind of hang out here. But now we're going to have to make that decision if we're going to go ahead and go full force.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're kind of gearing up for that. And I think
Yes.
it's kind of, it's
Yes.
very exciting. It's extremely scary. It's the whole thing, right? It's
Yes.
all the feels. And we can have all of those feels and still do it anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's that we can be scared, but we can still move forward. We can be, you know, really from here, it looks like you're absolutely terrified, and that's okay too.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
But
It's on track.
but it's almost like you know where you're heading, though. It's like you're taking more control of your own life this time, and so by taking more control of it, you know, you're the one who's going to have to make those changes. You're the one who's going to have to like jump off the cliff, right? And so that can be even scarier because nobody's helping pushing you out there, you know,
Right.
except for this internal thing that's making you jump. And
Okay.
you just know that we're getting there. What I love so much though is if you jump, right, you get, I probably can't see it with the light here, but you get this universe card. So the
Okay.
universe card is what we were talking about as far as that self-actualization, that like everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be. Everything that I've manifested in my mind is going to happen. So all of that is ready for you once you kind of, you know, start going
Yeah.
full force.
Okay.
So listen to that intuition though. If you listen to that intuition, it's going to kind of guide you. Is it going to be a perfect path? No, of course not, right? But it's going to be that progress that you're moving forward. And that's what you got to keep remembering is that, you know, every day isn't rainbows and unicorns, right? We get the days that are just like, I can't believe that happened. And everybody saw it and everybody knows it.
Right.
But it's moving forward with it. So listen to that intuition to be able to tell you when to push and when to back slowly, you know,
Right.
back it off and when to push again and back it off slowly. And one thing too is that it's showing, are you going to have to move with all of this kind of going on?
No,
About moving?
but I kind of understand what it's saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
'Cause, yeah,
It's
we're
kind of a
talking-
move, but not move the house. If
Gotcha.
that makes sense.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yep. So it seems like that's all part of it.
Okay.
So, yeah. I mean, it's looking very exciting. It looks so exciting on what's coming up and what this next chapter is. But again, use that intuition. That's going to really definitely guide you. So, do you do any like meditating or anything like that?
Yeah, kind of. I do yoga, so yeah,
Good,
always
good.
at the end I do. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, Shavasana is a great time to just like, you know, and so like you can do that. Listen to like affirmations of like reminding yourself like how amazing you are, those kind of things to be able to kind of help move this forward.
Okay.
Because I think your intuition's telling you it's time. We need to be doing this.
A long time ago, yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
So do you have any questions?
No, you pretty much, I'm kind of blown away, actually. You kind of hit everything right on the head.
Oh, good.
Which is-
Good.
Yeah, that was a blast
And
for
I
me.
can feel him like grinning at me this entire time. I'm trying to block him out.
Spot on.
I keep seeing the side eye.
Yeah,
was-
because he knows exactly what it is.
That's the most fun I think I've had on one of our shows in a long time.
Yay.
You know, I didn't have to talk. I could just sit here and watch
I
it.
could feel him the entire time.
Hey, I'm not going to lie. That was a blast.
Yeah,
Good,
that's
good,
interesting.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
very interesting. And it's interesting because obviously the accuracy and things like that, but just the fact of, you know, you realize that it's kind of reading your soul in a way. You know,
Yeah.
it's just like, whoa. It's,
Very much so.
yeah, it's an
Yeah.
exposure. It's,
Like what
it's
you think
interesting.
about in your own mind that you don't tell anybody else.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's pretty.
That's why I had to
pretty
warn
amazing.
you. If I'm getting too personal,
Right.
just tell me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
But it's that
wild.
whole idea of like bringing that unconsciousness into consciousness where you can like see it laid out for you. And when
Right.
you see it laid out for you, that's when it's like, oh, that makes sense now. That makes sense.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense.
It just makes you like feel like you're doing the right thing and you're
Yeah.
going down the right path. Like what you're already thinking is the right thought, which I think most of us always question
Oh, yeah. Oh,
our
yeah.
day-to-day decisions. Like, is this right or is this,
Every single day. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can see why it helps people
Well, sure.
for sure.
And
Yeah.
with divination, there's so many different tools, which is amazing. It's a great tool for divination. I even remember being a kid and like you would have the horoscopes and stuff like that too.
Oh, yeah.
That kind of could or could
Astrology.
not, right, lend or not lend to it. But it's very interesting how it all kind of ties in.
It is.
In fact, we've done a few different shows with people where we've talked about how like how different parts of the paranormal are so interwound together with all these different aspects. But no, that's a lot of fun. I'm not going to lie. But so when you do one of those, now that we've had one done, kind of bridging, between the science, all those different things, and of course spirituality and stuff like that. What would you say that is? What would the bridge be?
That bridge is really, I mean, the cards, but it's like that, putting it all together, I really call it is that like that synchronicity.
Right.
Is that by what I'm seeing is kind of is pulling is how do I say this? That what I'm seeing in the cards is the meaning for you. Like you're finding that meaning in the cards when I say it out loud. And I think that's what's important is that you're finding the meaning in it. So where I can read the cards, but you're also finding the meaning in it. And that's part of like, that's the big thing with synchronicity and like coincidences and things like that, is that we can see the same thing over and over again. But if it doesn't mean anything to us, we're not going to see it. Right. But with the cards, that synchronicity is saying like, you're finding that meaning as well in the cards when I say it. So I think that's part of that bridge. But to come really down to it is that it's just that unconsciousness coming out in a material form, so you can see it.
That's so interesting. I'm just kind of blown away.
Yeah, being complete and total transparency. Growing up, I was not always, I guess I wouldn't say a word accepting, but I was very skeptical of, a lot of the different things that we talk about, to be honest with you. But, tarot and things like that, maybe it's just because I didn't have an understanding of it, and I think that's pretty common for people where if they don't understand it, then it's, but I guess my question is, have you noticed that there's been a paradigm shift in how things were, in the beginning and kind of how the acceptance of it is? And, it used to be, you'd see these things like in, I don't know, I guess like fairs and stuff like that. And it was considered more fringe or something like that.
Like when we're kids, I remember like the movies, they always show the lady, with all the crystal ball and she looks like an old witch or something. And like that's how it's like always presented to you. Right. And it's not that way at all.
She pulls out the death card. And
yes.
Right, yeah.
Right. You're going to die in 3 days. Whatever.
But have you noticed there's been like at least a better understanding and a change in how it's viewed?
Yeah, absolutely. And which I'm grateful for, because that's part of like my goals in life too, is to make the cards just as mainstream as yoga. I don't know. Well, you're about the same age as me. So I was like, do you remember when yoga and meditation was really woo-woo? Like people were like really like, that's too much for me. That's yeah. And so like what I'm hoping is that tarot gets to be that same way, where it's like it used to be, but now it's all kind of part of like just normal conversations. And I work a lot with adolescents, and I can see the adolescents are just so into the cards. They're just so amazed by the cards. So I'm like, yeah, let's get this younger generation going. And they don't have the stigma that I think we had growing up, as far as the negativity or the evilness or any of that kind of stuff. So they're able to just they're being raised not ever being told that. So they get to
Right.
raise this whole different paradigm shift within the cards to be able to go like, we've never once seen these as being evil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They can make their own opinion
Yeah.
without fear.
Well, and
Mhm.
and I
Yeah.
think a lot of that has to do with you know, a lot of the things that are very popular right now, cards in general, you know, the all the role playing games and stuff like that. So I'm sure they find that kind of interesting too, you know.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, I would imagine, and obviously I'm nowhere near their age, but you know, they're in a digital world, so sometimes when they can pick up something tangible and do something kind of
Yeah.
cool, I'm sure
Yeah.
they probably do. You know, it
That's
is a
true.
different change for them. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. That's
Mm.
good to know because you know the stigma behind a lot of the things with divination and paranormal and stuff like that. Obviously, it's still kind of you know a little bit fringe, but it's definitely getting better, which is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. On
Absolutely.
that note, what are some, I guess, common misconceptions or things that you think people may not understand or feel like they've got it a little bit skewed when it comes to tarot or
Yeah. I
tarot?
think, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the
Yeah.
big thing is that prediction of death, I think,
Yeah.
is the big one. And death in the cards means kind of like end of a chapter of your life, beginning of a new one. So death is kind of that death and rebirth, not a physical death. And I think if anyone tries to say that they see physical death is just arrogant, you shouldn't go to see them. So, there's just
Yeah.
nobody can predict that one. That's between you and your higher self, whether
Mm-hmm.
that's God, universe, source, whatever you say, that's between you two. So I will never see that, and nor, if anybody claims to, is just being arrogant. So,
Yeah.
but that's usually the biggest one is that physical death. The death card is actually really amazing. It's one of my favorite cards because death is talking about death of a chapter, rebirth of a
Mm-hmm.
new chapter, but it's something that like we're doing ourselves. It's our like we're the one ending the chapter. So kind of like the idea of like if we're wanting to move or getting a new job, any of that kind of stuff, it's like, well, you have to quit your job in order to get to the new chapter. But
Hmm.
we're doing it. Nobody is forcing us to change. Nobody is forcing us to do something. And that's why it's one of my favorite cards. It's like, yay,
Mm-hmm.
it's change that I've been hoping for, I've been working for.
Right. Hmm.
Mhm.
That's good.
But
You know, and you're right because that would be a misconception that I even
Yeah,
carry. You know, when you
absolutely.
saw the death card, I was like, oh my goodness, here we go.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, um, funny enough, the very last thing I think I've seen with tarot would have been like Schitt's Creek. You know, where the waitress was doing
Oh, yeah, but that
yeah.
was like a goof.
Well, I know, but still, it's like
Yeah.
I've got so little information about it, so it's nice to
Yeah.
kind of get a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
you know, nuts and bolts. This is how it works. It's not, you
Mhm.
know,
Yeah.
if I pull the death card, don't, you know, don't freak out,
Don't freak
you
out.
know.
Now, the one thing I have heard about a deck, like you're supposed to get a new one and not use someone else's deck. Is that something that actually is something? There's
So
something bad
there's
about
a
that?
there's a lot of rules out there, like that I don't believe in any of those rules.
Okay.
I'm like, but I'm just I might be one of the few people there like I don't believe in any of that. Like,
Right.
there's some rules where it's like, yeah, that somebody has to gift them to you, and I'm like,
Mhm.
no, I believe that if you find your deck and you feel connected, go and get it. Like, why wait for
Okay.
somebody
Yeah.
else?
Yeah.
So there's another rule that they say is like never touch another person's deck and
Mm-hmm.
read from their deck. And I'm like, no, I don't believe that. But I was like, but it's just common sense, right? To ask somebody if they could
Yeah.
use your deck. Same thing as like asking somebody to use your pencil. Like
Sure.
you're
Right.
just not going to walk right in and grab it.
Right.
Right.
So there's a lot of those rules that I don't necessarily
Mm-hmm.
believe. I'm sure they had a purpose at one point, but
Yeah.
I'm more along the lines of like, oh, why make things more complicated than they need to be?
Sure. I mean, in the end, really, it's a tool. You
Yeah.
know.
I'm
Exactly.
just thinking maybe it had to do with maybe the connection with the person's cards. Like if you
Sure.
take someone else's cards,
Mhm.
then you're using their connection or something. I don't know. I don't remember exactly what it was. I heard about that, but I'm like, okay, but you have to cleanse them a certain way. And I'm like, how do you even do that?
Yeah, how do you cleanse that? Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. And people do that, like they'll like cleanse it with like you can do it with like the four elements or the you know, as far as like salt water and sage, things like
Right.
that. People will
Yeah.
cleanse the cards. They'll put it like under the full moon to charge. There's like all these little fun things. I think um, they're all meaningful
Yeah.
if that's what you want, you know.
Right.
So like
Right.
if you feel like putting them under the full moon charges them and gives you um, a better reading, great, go do that. You know, does everybody have to? No. You know, if that
Right.
doesn't feel right, don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a layer of subjectivity behind it. I mean, it's got to be, it's got to make sense for you too, I would imagine.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny because, you know, in the end, it's just a tool, and it's something that now, if there's a connection between it, if there's some kind of sentimental value or all
Well,
those
yeah,
sort of
like
things,
if your
sure.
grandparents or your
Yeah.
mother passed down her cards to you, then there's
That would be
a
amazing.
significant bond there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
But
mean,
that
they'd
would
never
be if there
sell
was a
any.
necklace, right? That
Sure.
would be the
Right.
same
Yeah.
thing as like a necklace. You would be like really attracted to it and want to keep it and hold it forever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously, we talked a little bit about the potential history and it being primarily European, at least in nature, is what people believe. But do you find, or are there differences throughout cultures or different countries that do the practice of tarot? Are they different, or is their practice different? How does that change?
Yeah, I think each culture has different ways and different means. Like, but I think there's a lot of cultures that do some type of divination, you know, some type of
Mhm.
connection. So, like people that don't have access to paper as easily, they might be throwing rocks, you know, like like with Norse, they've got runes, you know, because they didn't have access to paper. It was more like paper was always falling apart. So cards were
Right.
not very great, but they have runes where they could scratch and etch symbols on their stones. So it all has a lot of the same meaning, and it goes back to that monomyth of the hero's journey. But yeah, it just kind of depends on what they had access to, and you can kind of see that in a lot of cultures in different ways.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, and there's some that use bones and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
that's all really interesting.
I
I've always,
mean, yeah, it's just a tool
yeah,
going back to
Yeah.
it.
yeah.
So
In the end,
mhm.
oh, that's great. So where can our audience find you? I mean, what do you? Obviously, you got your day job, but how can they find you, and how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, they can find me at bridgethegaptarot.com or Tarot Readings by Rachel. Kind of in the midst of rebranding, so I'm just throwing both out. But you can find me at bridgethegaptarot.com or social media, Bridge the Gap Tarot, or Tarot Readings by Rachel on, again, all social media. I'm starting a YouTube channel, so if you're into the cards and just want to know more about it or how you can use it for yourself, you can go and follow me on YouTube at, again, same thing, Bridge the Gap Tarot. We're going to have all kinds of fun stuff, and I'm hoping to really show, again, like what you were saying, is that these cards can be another tool. And it would just be amazing if, like, anytime anyone was going to do something exciting with their life, everybody just starts going, yeah, what card did you pull about it? You know,
Right.
Yeah,
that would just be so fun.
that's awesome. That's great. No, that's I'm glad. And listen, whoever's listening or watching, please reach out to Rachel. That'd be
Yeah,
as Nicole found out, it can be very eye opening.
it is.
And,
It
you
is.
know,
If someone's interested in starting this, like buying their own deck and starting to learn, where's their first few steps? Like, how do they learn how to do this?
Yeah. So first thing is to find a deck, it's a lot easier now than it used to be. But you can go to any like metaphysical store. You can go to Amazon even, or Barnes and Noble. So many places have the cards. But what's really important is just sit with the cards and just look over them. And you can even ask the question like, is this deck right for me? And pull a card. You can kind of, without knowing how to read a card, you can kind of look to see if it's a kind of a positive or a negative card, right? If their sword's kind of stabbing somebody, you might think that might not be a positive card. But if you see this great, big, beautiful sun and like everything's growing and all this happiness, you could say, oh, yeah, that looks like a positive card. So just sit down and ask the cards. And a lot of readers have a lot of decks. I'm kind of unique where I only have one deck. And I have been using the same deck since I was 16. But it's okay to just grab a deck of cards and, like, after a while of playing with it, if it doesn't feel like it resonates anymore, go find another one. So, but you got to start just grabbing them and start practicing with them and seeing what you like and that connection. Again, like to read the books is great to give you that foundation, but at some point you usually need that mentor to kind of help you move from the book side to the intuition side.
And I would imagine,
yeah.
And I would imagine they don't need to get some super expensive deck. It's just something that makes sense for them.
Yeah,
something
exactly.
that resonates. Yeah,
and there's so many hundreds of different decks out there too. So, which is always a lot of fun. I mean, you have like medieval cat deck, and then you might have like the witch's cat deck, I mean,
Right.
So there's like so many different amazing ones, and it's just like no, just find the one that resonates with you and play.
That's awesome.
I can't emphasize that enough.
That's
great
awesome.
advice. Yeah,
That's great advice. Well, honestly, I can't think of any better way to end it than that. Thank you so much for coming on with us.
Thank you.
Again, I urge our audience to reach out to you, and thank you for doing a reading for my.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
I've got a lot to think about.
Yeah, can you
I'm gonna
imagine
get a
what
lot
would
of
happen
mileage.
after an hour?
I know, right?
I got a lot of mileage on that one. But anyway, thank you so much, Rachel, and hopefully we'll have you back, and we'll talk about some other stuff.
Please, thank you so much. This was
All right.
great.
Thank you.
I've been saying that wrong for years.
Well, it's the American way of saying tarot.
That just sounds better, though.
Well, yeah, everything sounds better when you're British.
That's true. Yeah, and it was nice to get you on the hot seat again.
That was actually fun.
Yeah, that was good. Tell us what you think, guys. Was that fun? It's different, and it's something that we've been wanting to do. But again, like I said at the beginning, it wasn't anything we knew anything about. So
No, absolutely not. But I've always been interested in it. Like, there's so many people do it. There's got to be something to it, right?
it rhymed.
I know. I didn't even mean to. But I will say, having a reading, I'm not making it up. I'm not lying. I'm not just saying, yeah, you're right for the show. She was spot on with everything she said.
Yeah, it really was interesting.
Especially like in the beginning when she was talking about me, being able to talk and all that stuff. If any of you don't know and haven't listened to the first few episodes of this podcast, this started out as a solo podcast with only Logan. I didn't want any part of it because I don't like public speaking. I'm very shy. I always have been. So learning how to have conversations has been a very difficult path for me.
And we're all very grateful for it.
Yes, but I'm learning. I'm
That's
getting
right.
there. So
honestly,
I found that interesting that she said that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, listen, guys, we had a great time. Hopefully you guys liked it. Comment, like, subscribe, all those cool things. And hope you liked it, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.